Hello, Virtual Doll Convention. We are here with Helen Kish and we are about to start our sculpting class. Hi, Helen.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. This is something we have been looking forward to so much. Okay. Helen, what did you just say to me about teachers? What teachers should aspire to?
Teachers, and I don't consider myself a teacher, but I think every teacher should aspire for their students to surpass them. Not to copy them, but to surpass them.
I love that. I absolutely love that. You've been a student a lot in your career.
Yes, I have.
And we're going to talk about a couple of the artists that you have taken classes with and that have inspired you in your work. So yes. I think it's just very creative and wonderful. So where are we going to start?
Okay, well, I thought what I would do is start, first of all, let me lay it out. We're going to demonstrate how to sculpt a child's head using a shortcut, which is a little skull that I created. And I'm going to show you the materials first, so if you want to come over this way.
Yay!
Now, we are going to be using an oil-based clay. It's called Monster Clay. It comes in 3 hardnesses, if you will: hard, medium, and soft. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can also, if you don't have access to that, you can also use water-based clay.
Okay.
There are different techniques. You've got to keep water handy, you've got to keep your clay moisturized and that sort of thing. But for the purposes of just playing around and sculpting and getting the feel of it, this is perfectly fine as well.
Oh, great.
So the other thing that I like to have around is a turntable. Since most of the work I do is small, the small turntable is fine. You always want to keep your work at eye level. And by the way, this is something that I aspired to for many, many decades, I think, before I finally was able to get a professional sculptor stand.
Look at that.
So for those of you who are really serious, this is something you should put on your wish list.
You guys can see it. Yes, maybe they're on Amazon. I'm not sure,
yes,
but
I don't know.
A sculptor's table, and it's
yes,
adjustable.
It's adjustable, and you can sculpt standing up, which is the way most, at least the teachers that I have had,
you sculpted standing up. Interesting.
Standing up. So, for our purposes, we're not going to be using an armature, and I will maybe or maybe not use this turntable, but because the skull is so small, and it's right here, I'm going to be working on it in my hand.
That is so neat. I love that.
So, anyway, all kinds of different kinds of turntables. This is just like a kitchen turntable. These are not ideal because you would have to prop this up on something to get it to your to the right height. But anyway, those are our turntables, and I think I'm just going to set these out for now. Thomas made this for me to set the skull on. Each one of these skulls is pre-drilled on the bottom, so that you can take I believe it's a 4-inch 20-penny nail and just countersink it into the back of a piece of wood. Doesn't matter what the wood looks like. And then you have something to rest your skull on, or if you want to anchor it on there with some clay, you can even put it on your turntable and work on it both hands free.
Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. And you can make that for less than $1, so that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing he wanted to make sure that you knew is that you take your wire cutters and you cut off the blunt end of the nail so that you don't stab yourself.
Okay.
And excuse me, this is a perfect point at which to say that be careful with all the tools that you're using. One of the hazards of using tools, sculpting, many other kinds of things too, is that you can cut your hands, cut your fingers. Once you do that, you got to stop sculpting until your cut heals. So that's no good. And God forbid that you should have to go to the emergency room. So just take real extreme care with all the tools that you're using. Okay, what else? I I also recommended in the list that if you don't have access to a skull, and we have a few of these available still, a la carte, but if you don't have that, you can't afford it. There are some online sources for these things, probably not this size, but a nice substitute and a very cheap one would be to go to the craft store and get a wooden egg. This is actually a real egg. I just boiled it this morning for this class because I only thought of this last night.
It's a great idea.
And they also make them in paper mache. So it makes a nice base for you to start adding your clay to.
Awesome.
And I will show you the landmarks for this in just a minute. Okay, tools. Now these are the tools that come with the kit. And I think I might have mentioned before that I'm a tool junkie, so I have, every time I see a new tool, I've got to have it. I've got to try it out. Two that I just found are this Kemper tool, and it's got a little tiny wire loop in there. Now it comes to a point which I'm not quite sure I like. It could have its uses. But I'm also thinking that sometimes you can adjust tools. I'm thinking maybe you could round that out. Might take a little work so that it becomes more like some of the tools that I use. Ah, well, here we go.
There it is.
This one is rounded out. Now this one I just bought. This is a Kemper tool right here. This one I just bought at the place where I buy my water-based clay. It's Gem. I don't know if I'm saying that right, tools. And it's supposed to fit into something else, but for me, who needs something else? This is perfect. This is, let's just pull up a piece of clay here. This is perfect for making a little
great.
Scooping out motion like that. And if you want, you can buy the base for it too. So those are just some other ideas for tools. Tools can be almost anything. They can come from your kitchen. I've used skewers, toothpicks, spoons. Anything that looks like, well, that might make a neat mark. Well, try it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Now, another thing that you're going to need is some kind of a base to put your clay on. I'm talking about cutting out clay, which we'll get to in just a second, to maybe heat it up a little bit with your hairdryer or a heat gun, and we'll get to that as well. It's nice to have some kind of a base for that. Could be bigger than that, probably should be bigger than that. What else have we got here? Books, of course. I recommend that everybody who's serious about this get a basic anatomy book. This book here is for drawing, but it gives you just beautifully drawn pictures of the anatomy. And I didn't mark it, did I? Wait a minute, maybe I did. So there you
Look
go.
at that.
There's the
the
skull right there. And then it goes into
That is so
all
neat.
the different views. And it goes into the neck. And then into the muscles. So there are so many out there. This is just one of many.
One that you like, though.
It's one I really like. Joseph Shepard, Anatomy, Complete Guide for the Artist.
Perfect.
Now, this one is, I think it was first printed in 1849.
Oh, wow.
It's a Dover publication. It's just a little book by Dr. J. Pfau. This one comes with a CD. Now, I bought the book, and I have the CD somewhere. I've never looked at it, but I imagine it's wonderful. But this is just a tried and true anatomy book. And then for the more advanced and more adventurous, this book is astonishing. This is Anatomy for 3D Artists, and it is by 3 total publications. I got it online, and it's just fascinating. I'm not a 3D art. I'm not a CG artist. I've never done that. Never tried it. But I've gotten so much from this book. Anyway,
Awesome.
It's just phenomenal sculptors in there and lots of beautiful techniques.
Oh, this is so great. Helen, thank you so much for sharing with us your favorite books.
Oh, I love it.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous. This is, when you showed me the cover of this book,
Yes.
I didn't think it was a modern sculptor. I thought
Yes.
this was like ancient artwork.
This is
Which
a
I
modern
love.
master,
Yeah.
Bruno Lucchese. I was fortunate enough to take class with Bruno Lucchese at least 2 summers in a row, and he's truly a master. He has also, I'm not sure if it's still in publication, but he did a video by Signalar Incorporated, where he actually sculpted a portrait of his son, who is also a sculptor, on camera. And it's just fascinating to watch him work, and he's so fast. He's such a master. I can remember one time in one of the classes, one of my fellow students said, "Well, he doesn't talk enough. You know, I don't think I'm getting anything out of this class because he doesn't talk." And I didn't say anything, but I thought, he doesn't need to talk.
Right.
He's poetry in motion.
Yes.
Watch him.
Watch. Exactly.
So anyway,
This is how we feel about you today. Truly.
and these are 2 other of his books. Modeling the head in clay has just been indispensable to me. Modeling the figure in clay, and
Amazing.
And this one is the technique of fired sculpture, and of course lots of images of his work in there.
Fabulous resources. I know our conventioners will be able to find these books online, probably used, and get them to a good home. It'll be great.
Absolutely, you'll never regret buying
Right,
these books.
buying resources.
Even if you're not serious about continuing with these, with sculpting, these books are, well, at least the Lucchese books are wonderful to
Yeah,
have. They give you
absolutely.
an appreciation for the art.
Absolutely.
So, all right, and so let's turn over here.
Yay. So we are going to Helen's. Is this where you do a lot of your painting and sculpting right here?
Well, this is where when I do airbrush, this is actually my airbrushing
Mm-hmm.
stand. But yes,
Cool.
this is where I do a lot of
So
my
cool.
sculpting. So
Look at all of this, everybody. I'm just going to pan over. This is where we're going to have our class, but it just looks so,
as you can
looks
see,
so
I like
good.
to have an anatomy book close, and
That's amazing.
So all of my anatomy books have smudge marks on them because I'm turning the pages with oily hands. or
Yes.
clay on my hands or something. But anyway, again, these are the tools that come in the kit. I just wanted to lay those out for you. And these are the skulls.
And these are the skulls. So these kits are still available on kishandcompany.com. You can order them at any point.
Now I want to talk about the clay before we go into anything further. The clay has been an issue for me for the last 10 years or so because I have arthritis in my hands. So while I know a lot of sculptors like to use the hardest clay possible, and there's a good reason for it, it's because once you put it into place, it stays. It doesn't move around. When you're working on another area, you come back and find the previous area that you have worked on destroyed or dented because it's too soft. So if you can do it, just use the hardest clay that you possibly can. Now, for this kind of clay, you really do need to soften it up before you can, and I did pre-soften some of this clay. So here again, dangerous tool.
Yes.
Watch yourself. But the idea is to take small pieces of the clay and just make a bunch of them like I've done here. And then you can take the clay. Actually, I don't think this is hard. It's softening too easily in my hands. And then the warmth of your own body is going to soften that clay so that you can start playing with it.
That does that looks a lot softer than I thought.
Yeah, I think this is probably the medium,
medium.
clay. Yeah, oh, I think, is that the hard one? Maybe I didn't grab a hard. Anyway, I do use medium as my hardest clay because of my hand issue. So that is my hardest clay, and
But it works. It works.
It works great, and it doesn't move around very much, so it's a good one to use. And the soft, I personally find it's just way too squishy.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see just by watching my fingers what the difference is.
Yes, that one almost looks like Play-Doh a little bit.
Almost
Not
feels
quite,
like that.
but
And the warmer it gets,
the more malleable it is.
the
yeah.
more malleable it is. So if you're going to be using this clay, just be aware of that.
Okay.
And if you do have the kit, you've got a pad about this size of hard, and one of medium, and one of soft. So I recommend starting over your armature, which is the skull, with your hardest clay that you can work with. And then if you run out of that clay, then going to the next hardest one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm gonna start with medium, and I'm gonna probably just continue with medium. But if you have to go to the soft because you've run out of the medium, then make sure that's kind of the last thing that you put on there. Okay?
Okay.
So, I guess we should get started.
Yay.
So what I've done with this little skull here is I've just colored it in with markers to show you some landmarks. This is the zygomatic bone, which is your cheekbone. And this is the mandible, which is the only part of your skull that actually moves is this bone here. And then this is the maxilla up here. This is your nasal bone. And this is your, these are your orbital bones, of course. Your nasal, I'm sorry, your orbital cavities, your nasal cavity, and then your frontal bone. And I've forgotten what the name of, the names of all these things aren't super important for this basic class. You certainly, if you want to, should learn them, what all the names of the bones and the muscles that we'll be putting on this skull are, but for this purpose, for the purposes of this class, I'm not going to be talking too much about specifics there. So anyway, there's that little guy. Now I have pre-cut a bowl of soft, which I'm not going to use, and a bowl of medium. So I'm just going to put, well, actually, I'm going to do one more thing before we finish, and that is to show you how to soften this up. Now, I've got a little tool here that packs a wallop. It is called a heat gun. A hairdryer will do the same thing, only with less power, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because when I turn this on, everything else better be nailed down or it's going to go flying.
All right, we're ready.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And you want to, okay, that's going to be hard to talk over, so I'm just going to tell you first that you want to keep it moving, and you don't want to get very close because it will melt your clay.
Okay.
Melted clay, as far as I'm concerned, is spoiled clay. I don't use it again if it melts, and we all know what melting looks like. I may even get there with this. So just keep it moving. And the same goes with your hair dryer. You just want to be really careful that you don't melt your clay. See, now this is a great deal softer. I can actually break this apart now with my fingers instead of using the knife.
That only took you not even 30 seconds, so you got to be careful.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't. When it starts to get shiny, like that actually is soft clay. I'm going to put that back there. When it starts to get shiny, you know you're getting too hot. Let me just see if we can get that to do. Can you see
Yep,
that?
we can.
Oops. All right. There we
Did
go.
it right away too, so that's easy to do, everybody.
Yes. So you certainly don't want to continue going once it's started to get shiny. That's the time to stop. Okay, so enough about that. Now the other thing that I've done here before we get started is just to take a column of clay that is going to serve as the basis for the neck on our piece later.
Okay.
So you don't have to do too much with that. You'll want to round the edges and so forth when we get to that point. But let's just set that aside. And also what I've done here is I've pre-worked one of the skulls just to show you what we're doing. We're filling in, you've all heard that expression, everything hangs off of her bones.
Yes.
Well, it's literally true. So you're going to be filling in under the zygomatic arch and over the mandible, over the teeth, the maxillary arch. You're going to be using little balls for eyes. And I just thought of something else this morning, and I just happened to have some different sized little wooden beads.
Oh, those work great.
And these will make a very nice basis, hard basis, in case you're worried about getting exactly the right size. So what I'm going to do with these, and I'm going to try to use the tools that are provided here. I'm just going to poke a little clay into there. And then place the bead so that you have the eye. Can everybody see that?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay.
That's cool. This is a good angle.
And then you want to try to make sure that you're putting the same amount of clay in each side so that you don't have one eye higher than another. While you're working on this, it's always good to check. Let's get the whole part of that eye. And this is true, what I was going to say is you always want to check the depth. You want to check from every angle. It's just not working. So let's just clean that off and start over. I think it's because I didn't press that clay in. All right, let's try that again. Some of the things that I do, I just do automatically. I don't usually talk to myself when I'm sculpting. So forgive me. Forgive me. Now, okay, here's exactly what I'm talking about. If you look from the top down, now you can see that this eye is protruding more than this eye. All right?
Yep, we can see that. Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So that's where you want to. I'm going to look from the side. And I actually want it to protrude a little bit more. So I'm going to make sure that one's in there solidly, pressing that ball in. And I'm going to put a little bit more clay behind this one so that they're both at the same level. Oh, I forgot to mention one other thing that's really, really handy to have when you're sculpting. It's a little early at this point, but that thing is a mirror. And that's because anytime you can get a different perspective on what you're doing, you can see things that you didn't see before. So let's see, that's pretty close. So here's what I made. You turn it around and you put it in the mirror.
That's a very interesting tip. I love that.
Another idea is just to turn it upside down and look at it that way. And sometimes the best thing to do is just to get up and walk away from your sculpt and take a break and come back in a few minutes or half an hour or an hour or two and then start it with a fresh eye. You'll see things immediately. Okay, so we're going to proceed now to fill in. Oh, before we go any further, I want to also show you that I had Thomas drill these holes here for me for a reason. These are the ear holes. And let's see, I'm going to take this. And these aren't really straight, so this is probably going to look crooked if it even goes in. We had it. There we go. So this is where your ear is going to be placed. So just keep that in mind and don't cover that up just yet. So we're going to take a little pat of clay and, you know, less is more. By the way, I use my fingers more than anything else, but on these small sculpts, you just can't get away. You have to use tools. So.
Well, that's good because hands are what we all have, so that'll come in handy.
Indeed.
That's funny.
Indeed. So we're just going to fill in around the mandible. And that's basically what we're going to be doing, is just adding muscle and fat and skin to this little
Just kind of
fella.
blending it in.
Blending it in with my fingers. Now, I don't worry about using the Goo Gone until we get much further along. And in fact, until we're close to the end. But this is something that is used to, get rid of those, that is used to smooth out the clay. And so if you have a little metal dish or a little glass dish, sometimes I just even use the cap, but that's dangerous because you could spill this and make a mess, and I frequently do. So I actually took a Burt's Bees
That's perfect.
metal cap and just put a little bit of that in there. You don't need much. If you need more, you can always replenish. Oh, and the other thing that I forgot to mention, of course, was that I like to keep some wet ones around because I don't have a source of water on this level. And some paper towels just to clean the Goo Gone off my hands because I frequently just dip my finger into it and use it to smooth.
Wow, that sure smooths real quick.
It does. It's great, and I guess it smells good too. I don't have a sense of smell, so I couldn't tell you, but people say it smells like citrus. Okay, and there's why we need our paper towels or a rag or something to clean that off. Now I'm going to just wipe this back with a Q-tip because it's too soon for the Goo Gone. So goo be gone. I have to tell you one other thing.
Yeah.
Every time I do this, because I don't sculpt every day, I wish I did, because it's really my favorite thing to do. But every time I go back to do this again, I wonder if I remember how.
Oh, really?
I
bet a lot of us feel that way
I
about
really
things,
do.
though.
And I think it's important that you know that I feel that way because,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, I've been at it a long time and I should know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm always doubtful.
But that thought going through your head is, do I know how to do this? I think we can all resonate with that feeling.
So, next thing I'm going to do is go up here. I believe this is the parietal area above the zygomatic bone and fill that in. Now, around the eye is the bony prominence that we call the brow. We actually have a brow bone. So, at this point, I'm filling in the holes. But overall, we're going to stay pretty close to the skull. If you take your own hands and feel your skull through your hair, you'll see there's not a lot between your fingers and the bone of your skull. So you're not going to need a lot of clay to cover that. Most of the clay that we're going to be using is going to go on the face. Okay. Next, let's give this poor little thing a fill in the nose there.
It's amazing how much more human it already looks just with the nose and the eyes and
Exactly.
a little bit of stuff around the cheeks.
Exactly.
I'm just going to see what it looks like from this angle too.
Okay.
That looks really good.
All right. Now, when I first started sculpting, my faces were flat, just completely flat, because I didn't get it that a mouth doesn't sit on top of the face. It goes around the face. You can see that here. So what's really fun, for me anyway, is to start adding clay to that area. Now here, I'm going to start using my tool. And there's a muscle that goes all the way around the mouth. It's called the orbicularis oris, I believe. It looks really gruesome in the anatomy texts, but it's what makes our mouths move.
It's so essential now. I'm learning to know about these things. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what parts go where, really.
Right.
When you got the muscles down, just as what you're showing, it's amazing.
There's also another little muscle, and it's a deep muscle, so I'm surprised that I know about this one, but it's a really important one, and it extends from the orbicularis oris back in this direction, and it's called the risorius, which is the muscle that makes us smile, be able to pull our lips back and smile.
Yes, that is an important one.
So we're just going to pretend that it's all there. Now, I love getting lost in details, but don't do that. Try to work the whole sculpt and not get lost in eyes or lips or anything just yet. I'm going to go ahead and put a lower lip on this just because it looks a little ghoulish. And we'll come back to that later. Okay, now this poor creature hasn't had much to eat lately. So, well, let's do a quick fattening up.
It's a child's face after all. They're supposed to be plump.
Exactly.
So you're just grabbing chunks and kind of layering it on.
Just layering it on. Keep moving your skull around so that you see it from all sides while you're working. It's not important that it be pretty. What's really important here is that you remember that there are bones under there, even in a chubby little child's face. There are actual bones under there. That way you don't turn out with a flat face like I used to. Now I'm going to move over to one of my favorite tools. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to put these in the kit, but these are wooden tools that have, various degrees of a point on one end and then a loop on the other. And I really like these for small spaces. But you can use any of the tools. I'm going to start filling in around the eyes a little bit. Oops, there went a stray piece.
Stray pieces will fly.
They will.
So to me, this looks like already a lot of the images we have seen in your anatomy books.
Right.
So it's so cool to see this evolution.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cover that mandible. And soften that jawline up. Let's go back to the brow bone. At this point, I think it looks like a shrunken head, honestly.
It does, kind of. I was thinking it looked like the book page that's right there, but we can see it taking shape, though.
Right.
You've got a little piece right behind the head, and you're just grabbing little chunks and layering them on.
Right. to soften some clay. And it is good if you can keep a little in the back where your fingers are still warming it up as you're working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this clay is moving fast on me. Now, I have to tell you one other thing. I don't start with a skull when I sculpt. This is something I did especially for a class that I taught a few years ago, but it's not the way I really work.
How do you
I usually
do it?
I start with, well, let me go grab that egg. I start with a ball of clay. And I begin, let's see, did I bring over something to draw on? No, I didn't. And as you can see, it's almost the same size as the Sculpt, so that's convenient. And this is a real egg. We already talk about that?
Yep,
Okay.
we boiled it this morning.
So I'm going to try to
Still a little warm.
to go on the side that it didn't crack. There. So the trick is to make kind of an egg shape. Cut that shape in half visually. Cut that piece in half. Cut that piece in half. And this kind of gives you placement for your eyes. So I'm not saying that I build a skull every time I work.
But you do lay out your...
But I lay it out. Exactly. Now, obviously, this isn't as round as I want it to be. So I'm going to have to build that out with clay. And also, when you look at the egg from the top, there are some problems with the egg, honestly. If this was clay, I would take this part away, because our foreheads do not, even a baby's forehead does not go around like an egg. Obviously, I would add clay here to make that roundness. I would add clay here for the zygomatic arch. And then in the back, we're looking from the top. Remember, this is gone. I would add clay back here. I'm going to try to do this very gingerly. We may have a mess on our hands, but...
Well, it's a boiled egg, so
Right.
that's a plus.
So I would add clay back here.
Oh, it happened. Uh-oh. That was exciting. I'm sure a bunch of our conventioneers just jumped in their seats. There we go.
All right, so what I was trying to show you is that I would add clay to the back because
That's great.
our skull is narrower at the forehead than it is at the back of the skull.
Yes, that does make
Okay.
sense. That's great.
That was fun.
That was our comedy act in the middle of the sculpting class, everybody. No, that's funny. It's a freshly boiled egg, so it's not surprised that happened. But the egg
No,
is a
I
great
don't
idea.
recommend using a real egg. Get one made of wood
Yes.
or not styrofoam. Styrofoam is a mess to sculpt over. I don't recommend it unless you. No, I just don't recommend it. Period. But there are some nice paper mache shaped eggs out there that you can practice on too, or just make one of your own out of clay. You're just going to need a lot of clay to do that. That's the problem. Okay. Now that we're all nice and relaxed, I'm going to start filling in a little bit more. I read a book by an artist, well, a writer, actually. And now, of course, her name escapes me, but she talked about the creative process being one in which everything's going great, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I can attest to that. It happens every time I work. Those are the times when it's a good idea to just get up and give yourself a break.
Take a breather.
Take a breather, come back to it later, maybe even a couple of days later. So now what I'm doing is trying to show you how to change planes. So here we have one plane. You can see it definitely from the side. That is one plane. This is another plane. I don't know if you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Let me make it more apparent.
There we go.
All right, is that becoming more clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, but you're going to be unifying all of those planes. But you don't have to do it right away. So I'm going to just keep it exaggerated for now. Come back around the curve, over the teeth. And let's just make this a little less freaky looking. And let's make a coil. And just break that in half.
Okay, yep.
And let's start with the under eyelid. And fill that in a little bit.
So you're rolling it on and then just kind of smoothing it out.
Right. And this under eyelid also has at least two planes, if not more. This one here, and this one here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm exaggerating.
No, and that's good. So know that, everybody. She's exaggerating so we can see it on camera.
Okay. And another thing that I'm going to do is, let's see, where's the one with the pointy, yeah, the scruffy toe. I'm going to
I'm like right over top. I hope we're not crowding you too much.
Those eyeballs are giving me the creeps, so I'm going to just go ahead. Oh, see, I'm using a pencil as a tool. I mean, whatever's to hand. I'm going to fill those
Oh, that's a good idea.
those up.
Now, what do you use when you don't use the beads?
I would just use clay.
Okay.
Yeah, just like this.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, there is a good reason for using clay and not a bead, because if you, like my teacher Bruno Lucchese likes to do with his sculpts, if you like to, I mean, he doesn't make dolls, obviously, but when he does an eyeball, he goes in, let's see, where's one of those little round tools? Yeah, here we go. He goes into the eye and carves out the pupil.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, not the pupil, the iris. Now, of course, this eye would be attached, and there would be an upper lid and a lower lid, and it would be basically gorgeous. I'm talking about his.
If he was doing it.
Yeah. So you can't do
No,
that.
that looks good, though.
You can't do that if you have a bead in there.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't do it. But for our purposes, we are sculpting a head that will hopefully become a doll. And I'm just going to continue on with this eye and taking another little sausage. I'm going to fill in over the eyeball. If I can get it to stop sticking to my fingers. And then just unifying the forms here. Now, this is a plaster tool, and there's no other special name for it. It's just a steel plaster tool. This is the one that comes in the kit, and the one end is really too big for this size of a sculpt. This size it's just too big. It's not going to be, we can use it for other things, but we can't use it for the eye. But this side is going to be pretty good for the eye. Trying to use the tools that are in the kit. So going to the Sgraffito tool, I'm going to go to the corner of the eye here, carve into that a little bit. And actually, before I go any further, I'm going to cover that whole bead. Very lightly.
It's amazing how good that eye looks already.
Starting to take shape. Okay, so here's where things fall apart. You do one thing, and then you have to go back and redo something you just did. But that's okay. Clay is very forgiving. And oil-based clay does not dry out.
Well, that's good, because
So-
with our painting class, it was like you had to move quick and then it dried out and then you had to use more.
Exactly. Now, the disadvantage of that is that there's only one thing you can do with your oil-based sculpture. If you want it in another medium, you have to make a mold over it.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot fire it. As you've seen, if you apply heat to it, it just melts.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that to happen. Now, I've got some sculpts that I've kept, oil-based sculpts that I've kept for years that I haven't even made molds of, and they will last for practically forever.
Unless they get too hot.
Unless they get overheated. Exactly. But, you know, if you want to do anything else with them, like make a doll, you've got to transfer them to another medium. Okay. I'm pressing the lower eyelid up against the eyeball.
Cool.
Well, it's starting to look more like an eye,
Mm-hmm.
but I've definitely got a lot of work filling in around it. This might be an okay eye for an old lady, not for a child. So we're going to have to be filling in around that. And of course, if you're doing this in water-based clay, the challenge is to keep your clay moist, but not too moist, and keep your hands clean. I love water-based clay, don't get me wrong. I love it. But it's really messier than this is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's look at this nose. All right, looking at this from the side, it's starting to take almost a human shape. And I'm going to add a little bit to the nose. All the way up. Blending in on the sides. And again, using my fingers. I think you need some nostrils. So I'm just going to take a little piece of clay, roll it up into a ball, try to keep track of the halves, and stick them on there for nostrils. I'm going to try to fatten this little face up a bit. Go back under the eyelid, the lower eyelid, and just add some fat. There's also a little pad of fat usually right on the side of the nose.
So you don't want to forget about that. And we're going to fill in that, ease that plane between the cheek and the mouth. Just see if we can't start making this look younger.
So she is freehanding, so you're just kind of filling it in where it looks like it needs to go.
Right. And I didn't plan this beforehand, but right now I think what I'm going to do is leave this side skeletal over here, somewhat skeletal, so that you can see the difference.
I think that's a great idea.
Just adding muscle and fat can make.
We thought you planned it because it is really neat to see both sides.
Well, yes, I think so too. A class that I took with, actually Robert Tonner asked me if I would like to attend this class with him. He had found this marvelous sculptor named Andrew Kars. And he was going to take another sculpting class with him for a week out in California. And he asked if I wanted to go. And I said, well, yeah, I wanted to go. And his method, and his model is at the end of this table here, if you want to take a look at it. His method.
There you go. Oh, it's a little dark, but
is to, what is
you can see there's half and half, everybody.
right. So you've got the muscles on one half, you know, almost skeletal,
Right.
and then the other half with the flesh.
Yeah. Oh, for
So,
sure.
It's,
Makes a lot of sense.
it's a pretty neat way to learn. Okay. Again, just adding a little fat. And I'm going to go back up to that eye. Make another little roll. I'm sorry, my fingers are in the way here.
No, that's all right. We're just kind of crowding in so that we can see it. Hopefully you guys can see. I know we have a pretty good view. You do a good job holding it back. Is it hard for you to do one side when you're not working on the other? Or can you kind of envision it just working on one side?
You mean in terms of matching the sides?
Yeah, or just, when you typically do this, would you then work on each side, like work
Yes, typically
at both sides at the same time?
Yes, typically
Okay.
I would do that.
This is a good angle.
All right. Taking a look at the profile again. Starting to look a little younger.
It is.
I was told when I started making dolls that the hardest thing of all to do was a child. And the younger that they went, the harder it was. And I think the reason for that is that there is so much softness over the bones. You can't see them easily, so you have to envision that they're there.
Now, you do a lot of children, so for you, is that the case, or were children something that kind of worked for you?
Oh no, I had to work at it.
Yeah.
I worked at it for a long time before I really think I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many years. As anyone who's got my book, the book that was written about my work, can attest, the first few chapters you would think, why did this woman ever think she could be a doll artist?
And that book is wonderful, everybody. It's on kishandcompany.com. Yeah, it's a great book.
So,
That's good for people to hear from your lips, though.
yes, and you know, nobody starts at the top. We all start as amateurs, passionate amateurs.
Right.
And, you know, for me, it was just a question of setting myself a goal with each sculpt that I did. Obviously, in the early years, I concentrated entirely on the head. Then once I got to where I felt like I was a little bit proficient with the head, I started moving to the hands. And, you know, obviously when you're doing a dog, you've got the whole body. So that takes a lot. That took me a lot of time. I mean, other people might be a lot quicker. It took me a lot of years.
Helen, with the virtual convention, you've been spending a lot of time putting kits together and a lot of time doing the hand painting.
Mm-hmm.
But on a typical part of your life, which is, it's hard to say what is typical, but how much sculpting do you do?
Well, a lot less than I'd like to.
Mm-hmm.
As far as designing dolls, I probably only do that a few times a year. And I know your next question is going to be, how long does it take? And I have no idea. I've never.
I'm sure
kept
each project
track.
has its own
I've just never kept
thing.
track.
Sure.
I mean, this, to me, sculpting is a way of losing myself. And so when I lose myself, I lose time also. And I've just never had the discipline to time myself. Because I don't care. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm loving
Right.
what I'm doing. I'm lost in it.
Well, and if you're rushed, you're not going to get the same results, and it's just not going to be the same.
Right, and the opposite is true too. If you work on something too long, and I found this especially when I'm working in wax. By the way, the next stage, after we finish a head like this and get a mold made, is to cast that in wax.
Mm-hmm.
And I finish my own waxes. And sometimes, well, I don't do it anymore. I've learned from my mistakes of the past. But I would work on a wax until I had completely changed it from what it was originally supposed to be, thinking I was improving it and not improving it at all. All right. Here I'm going to use a tool that I was not able to include. Let me just show you these tools in the kits because I couldn't find them. And I would love it if we could get them made, or if Thomas could make them. His background is in tool and die making, so I'm hoping that I was hoping that he could make them for the kit this time, but that just didn't work out. So these are also plaster tools, but they are a lot thinner. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I have different sizes of these so that I can get down and, well, actually, Thomas carved the ends of this one off for me. It was a lot bigger. So my smallest end is this one here. So this one, and of course this is the big, the medium, and the small, and I'm fortunate enough to have two of those.
Well, if he wants to make them, you can put them on Kish and Company, and I know we'll buy them.
For sure. So anyway, these are very nice for working on lips as well. Get those out of the way now. Okay, we've got too much space between the lower lip and the chin, so we're going to fill that in. Clay stuck to me everywhere. When you're working the mouth, you want to just keep in mind that everything is round. Around this way and around this way.
Okay.
Another point to notice is that you can notice this on yourself if you look at your own profile in a mirror. When you're talking about the eye, that tool keeps getting away from me. This happens all the time when I'm working. Where is that tool? When you're looking at the eye, you're going to see the inside corner of your eye is out further from this plane than the outside corner.
Mm-hmm.
That's so that you can look sideways. Very important point. Okay. Time for some clay warming. And it does get, this medium does get quite stiff again if you're not constantly massaging it with your hands. I'm going to go up here and do a brow bone, a little more of a prominent brow. Might be better if I were left-handed, huh? I'll try using my left hand. how young we're going to get here. But
Looks like teens.
Yeah, right now it's an old, definitely older child, teenager.
I would think an old head would be harder to do because of all the wrinkles you have to sculpt.
Yeah, but you don't have to sculpt wrinkles to get the illusion of age.
That's an interesting point.
It's fun if you can do it.
Do you like sculpting wrinkles? I would think that'd be kind of challenging.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I didn't exactly, well, I did sculpt wrinkles into it too, but I did a sculpt of a man that was going to be made in porcelain by the factory in China. And because it was a male sculpt, and it was a full body sculpt, I put texture into the clay, or into the clay, but then also it was textured in the wax. And when it came back to me in porcelain, it was completely smooth.
Oh,
Totally
oh,
smooth.
dang it.
They thought I had made a mistake.
Oh, no.
And they polished every bit of texture, a wrinkle out of it.
Oh, you must have been so
I was kind
disappointed.
of just dumbstruck.
Yeah.
What did they do? But I love sculpting old people. This is a head that I did. Actually did a whole body
Cool.
for a large ball jointed resin doll that is around
That's
here
awesome.
somewhere. And yes, he's very wrinkled. His whole body is wrinkled.
And that's what I was referring to. That's a lot of things to sculpt in there.
Yes. Okay. One of the reasons that this is not going to look like a child is because from the side, it's starting to look a little younger now. But we need this action going on underneath the chin. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in under the mandible, under that jawbone. Now this is where you have to kind of be careful with your sculpt. See, because my clay is soft where I've been working on it, it's very easy at this point to put an indentation in there that wasn't meant to be there. So you want to try to, you know, if it's more comfortable, go to a stand and work on it from there. Or at least try to keep your hands on the part that doesn't have the clay as much as possible at this stage. Then, of course, the other thing you can do is walk away from it, let it get hard again, and come back and add what it is that you want to. Okay. Now, see, we're getting a little bit more of a
Sure are.
childish profile to that. I'm going to go ahead and stick this block here in, just to give me something else to hold on to. And I'm going to go ahead and wedge that. We're not going to go into the muscles of the neck because for most people that are making a doll, that's not going to be entirely relevant. In the way it would be if it was just a sculpt. Okay. Now, remember what I said about the ear holes. So, now I know people who make ears as a pair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually do that, but then after I don't do that, I wish that I had, because it's maybe easier to get things to be symmetrical. But basically what you want to do is make an ear that is going to go from about the brow bone to the nose. So that's about the size that you want to look for.
That's a great tip.
Okay. And you start with a C shape. I mean, the shape of a C. Not, well, I guess there's a reason why it's called the concha, because it is kind of a seashell shape. And let's see. Oh, that's way too big. So let's pare that down. And, or maybe it's like an apostrophe. Then you're going to want to take one of these tools, which is in the kit, a loop tool, and carve out most of this you'll do when the ear is on the head, but I think you can see where we're going with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Is that about the right size? All right. I'm going to add a little flesh here for that ear to stay on. Oh my. Well, this is so thick. Let me show you. That ear is so thick that I can just take it off, cut it in half. And I've got my two ears.
Well, that makes it easy. Or convenient, rather. That
Yes.
does not look easy to me.
Okay, and then you want to just tilt your ear back a little bit. It's very pliable right now. And if I want my ear to stick out a little bit more, I just go to the back. And I add a little clay back there. And I do like sticky out ears. Maybe it's because my dad had sticky out ears. I think they're cute.
They are very cute, and it's nice to see them in with the hair.
Yes, exactly. They don't just disappear in here. Okay, so going back to that C shape again. And there are different planes in the ear as well. I'm carving behind the lobe here so that I can pull that forward a little bit.
Amazing.
All right, coming along. Now let's go ahead and fill this in a little bit. This is where the, the corner of that jawbone is. So that's a landmark for where you place your ear, as well as that ear hole, if you don't have one, on whatever your base is. And I'm just going to soften these forms here a little bit. See, in sculpting, one thing leads to another. Now I want to fill out the neck. So I'm just going to do that a little bit. Even though if this were a sculpt for a doll head, I would probably be cutting it off right here and making the hole underneath so that the neck of the body would fit right up into it. But since we're not necessarily going to do that with this head, I'll just go ahead and add a little bit of neck, a little bit of child neck.
And this class, everybody, is designed to give you the basic technical tools and skills to feel like you can give it a shot, get started, and see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. And look where we started over here.
Right.
Anybody can do this.
I agree.
Now, you're going to need a little practice to get to this point.
Everything takes practice.
Everything takes practice, but you can get there. You absolutely can get there. Okay, before I forget about it, I probably should stick that other ear on. Have clay there. Well, that doesn't look at all the same. Let's try it this way. Now this is going to look different because we haven't filled in the jawline quite as much. But you see where we're going with this. We're trying to keep these symmetrical as much as possible. Now here, just a little bit, a word about texturing or about unifying forms. I didn't include one of these in the kit because I couldn't find them. But this is another steel tool that has serrated edges. Many things have serrated edges. I'm thinking of like a mustache comb. You probably got things in your kitchen that have serrated edges. You want to get as small as a serrated edge as possible when you're working on something this small. But what this can do is just help you unify the forms so that instead of looking at disjointed pieces of clay, you can actually see what you've got. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
But,
It does make sense.
you can see where you have to fill in holes. By the way, even though I don't have nails that I can use as tools, for the most part, I do use the back of my nail to smooth. So there you go. Hands are our best tools.
I can see how that helps a lot. It's fascinating to watch.
By the way, the placement of your brow is going to give expression to your sculpt's face. So you want to be probably be careful about not making it look angry. There's another wonderful book called Facial Expressions, which I wish I had pulled out to show you. It goes through all the expressions, all human expressions that are possible, and shows you how to draw them, or in our case, sculpt them. Okay, now this is far, far, far from being finished. I hope I've given you an idea of how to get started.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just entranced right here watching this, and we started with a blank skull, and now we can see a person coming out.
That's really the fun part of it. It's just so much fun. I'm gonna use that to bring it in. You can lift the lid up for a more open expression, surprised expression. You can go in and mark out your iris. I do this often before going to clay, just so that I can see what my sculpt looks like. Then I fill it back in.
Okay.
Because for purposes of making a doll, you want a smooth surface. Now, if I were doing, doing something else, I might just leave that. Okay. We need to pay some attention to this nose. Now I'm just carving in to indicate nostrils. Mind you, I'm just doing it on one side now. And you want to soften all those all those places where one plane meets another, especially the younger you want to go. And if you make a hole too deep,
Just fill it on in.
just fill it up. I'll give this one a pug nose. And I'm going to fill in that upper lip a little bit. Now this is where you can use your tools. Have your tools do the work, because your fingers, unless you're really a tiny person, are not going to
Too
work
big.
for this. They're just too big. But you can use the flat of your cleanup tool, one of your cleanup tools, and just make it go around. Turn it like that. Make it into a curve. Or make it curve into the clay.
Mm-hmm.
Lips are interesting because there's a definite structure to our lips. The top lip you can think of as almost 3 parts. You've got, and I don't know what the technical names for these parts are, but you've got this center part here, which is the most prominent. Let's see if we can do that from the side. This center part is the most prominent. I happen to like big lips. As any of you know, my dolls probably figured out.
Yes, we have.
But
It's your signature. They're your lips.
but whether your lips are thick or thin, they still have the same structure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good to keep in mind. And you see here, I'm wanting to go and do that side because that's the way I usually work. But I'm going to try to just do this half. Your bottom lip, on the other hand, is like 2 parts with, and in some people this is very prominent. But there's like almost a split in the center of your bottom lip for the 2 parts of the bottom lip. And of course, more clay. And of course, I think you see, this kind of a pouty lip on babies a lot. They seem to have big, juicy lips. Of course, we want to blend this in a little bit better. The wonderful thing about working with clay is that whatever you take away, you can add back in.
Yeah, that's a big relief.
And this little curved tool comes in very handy for spaces like this. And a little loop tool to put that philtrum in there. Yes, this looks very bizarre to me, which is
We
why
can
I
see
keep
it.
going back to the profile to see what I'm actually doing here. Because I am so accustomed to doing both sides of the head. Okay, and we're going to fill in. This looks empty to me right here. This space right above the nose. So I'm going to fill that in with a little fat. Just using my fingers. Another feature of very young children, and which seems to diminish as they get older, is that they frequently have very round foreheads. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this a round forehead.
Oh yeah, that made a big difference.
Okay, a little more clay. Down here again. This is a good time just to unify the forms and see what you've got. Now, you can see the brow bone more closely this way, and know that the forehead is not just a monolith across the front of your face. It has planes as well. So let's look at that half.
That is amazing.
We're coming along. We are coming along.
That is amazing. Okay, virtual convention, we are going to switch batteries and we will be right back. Okay, so we are all charged up, and we are back. This is so cool, Helen. We have just seen this take shape from a skull.
Right. It's fun when you start seeing a personality there. But before I go too much any further, I may have given you more than enough to digest already. I want to show you how to take care of some of the smoothing that you can't do with your fingers. And I'm going to try to do it around the eye, because that is the area where I have most need of this, and you will too, I think. So I use these Q-tips, and we already poured our Goo Gone into the little tin. I dip the end of the Q-tip in there. And you know what? I realized I've done this whole thing without my close-up glasses.
Hey, it just, see, you knew what to do. You knew how to do it.
Anyway,
You didn't even have to see. You just did it.
I didn't even have to see what I was doing. So, just going in there with the Q-tip and smoothing it out. These are really great. You can also just use a regular Q-tip. Do the same thing. You want to be careful not to get too much on there at a time, too much Goo Gone on your Q-tip at a time. But you can take that and you can go in and smooth. See how wonderfully that works?
It works so well.
You know, I forgot one thing that I didn't mention before. An abrasive is always nice. My fingers are pretty rough, but sometimes if you just take a stocking and put that on your finger, dip it in the Goo Gone.
Oh, that works great.
See how those disappear?
Mm-hmm.
So never throw your old run stockings away. Keep them for sculpting. They're good for so many things. And then the last thing, the last tip with the Goo Gone is to take a brush. I'll just grab one out of here, the old brush pile. Sometimes I use a real stubby brush like that. Other times I just use a brush that is no longer suitable for painting, as you can see. And I dip that in the Goo Gone, and I use that to go in. And each one of the kits does have one of my old brushes, as a matter of fact, in there, so that you can do this with your Sculpt. So this is where we're at.
That's amazing.
This is not where we started. Actually, this is where we started. And you can do this. So give yourself a chance. Take it easy. Take it as slow as you want. There's no rush. And have a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I love it. Helen, this was incredible. I'm beyond belief. It is just revolutionary that we have just learned this, and I cannot wait. I'm sure you cannot wait to see what comes out of this in the world.
Oh, I hope I will see.
Yes.
Yes.
No, they're going to post it, and I'm sure send you photos.
Great.
This
Great.
is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Rachel.
bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.